President Rigathi Gachagua. It is quite a defining week for this man and perhaps for the head of state as well, and members of parliament who will be at the center of this particular impeachment process if at all they decide to table this particular motion at the floor of the National Assembly. Now, the president has called for a Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting where he's set to meet members of parliament, and members of parliament from Kenya Kwanza, or at least UDA party largely, have warned the head of state not to intervene or to even interfere because their minds are made up already on what they want. Now, it is alleged at least 300 members of parliament have signed this particular impeachment motion, which is way past the thirds of members of parliament required, and that figures at 177 MPs who should constitutionally sign the motion before it gets to the Speaker of the National Assembly. So I'd love to have an all-round conversation around this, just to understand, is the Deputy President first and foremost being treated fairly from members of parliament of the UDA party or from Kenya Kwanza members of parliament? Now, Azimio leader Kalonzo Musyoka has called on Azimio MPs not to interfere and let this be a Kenya Kwanza battle at the floor of the National Assembly. So we'll be having an all-round conversation around that, where your feedback is highly welcomed across our social media platforms. Our SMS line is open 23059. The hashtag on X is Morning Live. You can tag us as well at TV EBN. So let me introduce my guest in studio this morning. I'm joined by Mwito Mureithi on my immediate right, who's a political commentator. Asante sana Mwito for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right, and just next to him is Moses Kimanzi, who's a lawyer as well as a political analyst. Thank you very much, Moses, as well for your time this morning.
Thank you, Cindy.
All right, before we get this conversation started, I'd love us to listen into the UDA Party Secretary General Hassan Omar, who on Saturday confirmed that he'd received reliable information that majority of UDA members of parliament had signed that motion. Essentially, what he said as well was that if majority of members of parliament from UDA party agree with the motion, then they have no option as well but to eject Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua from his office as the deputy party leader of the ruling coalition or the ruling party. Let's listen into that.
I'm reliably informed by most of our members of parliament that many of them from the UDA party have appended their signatures and are in support of that motion of impeachment. I think we will go with the majority members of the UDA party. If the majority members of the UDA party are in support of the impeachment, then the UDA party itself will also support what the members feel is in the best interest of the party and the country. And in fact, should that motion of impeachment sail through, our immediate concern then will be to eject him also as a member of the party, because then you cannot be found to be grossly incompetent, grossly undermining the constitution and national unity, and then still become a ranking member of this party. So I think if I were a parliamentarian myself, I will find sufficient ground to impeach. In following up with what Honorable Nyakundi has said, you cannot preach the gospel of ethnicity, malice, division, gospel of exclusion, gospel that tries to incite one group of people against another. He has been the most catastrophic, the most insidious in terms of dealing a very decisive blow to the unity of this country.
On the issue of impeachment of the Deputy President, the motion has not been brought to Parliament yet, but if the motion is brought to Parliament, we will look at it, and if the grounds are sustainable enough for the impeachment of the Deputy President, we will impeach him. But if the grounds are not sufficient enough, he'll have another chance. But what I will say to the people of Kenya, because this is a matter of concern, the Deputy President has looked to be like someone who's very tribal, someone who does not want to engage people from other regions across the country. He's said to be a Mrima person. And as a country, we want someone who is a symbol of national unity, who will be visiting other regions and hear the problems of other regions. And
all right, so send in your feedback, thoughts, comments, questions you may have, and we'll be able to, weigh in on them with my guest in studio. So, gentlemen, let's get this show started. Now, Mwito, from where you sit, if you look at what members of parliament are saying, particularly those from the UDA party, the Speaker of the National Assembly as well himself weighed in on this particular conversation. Sounds like his goose is already cooked and there's no any other way for him at the moment.
Well, thank you. Seemingly, it's like what you've just said, that the goose is cooked, but it's not. Because the credibility of the people who are to judge the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, are already depriving themselves that credibility by becoming biased.
You mean members of parliament?
Members of parliament, and not only members of parliament, let me talk about the speaker himself and his deputy. They have already declared their position. You know, Kenyans are not daft. Kenyans read between the lines. They know what the Speaker of the National Assembly is saying. They know what Gladys Boss-Sholay said in public, that you must go and nobody touches our man, that is William Ruto. So the president, who is supposed to be a president for the whole country, is now becoming their man. While Mount Kenya people are clinging on to the survival of Rigathi Gachagua, Mount Kenya voters, leave alone the MPs. The MPs can make the decisions. They're elected by the 5 million plus voters. The ones who have elected those few 200 plus MPs. The decision that should worry the president is how he will be able to sustain a relationship with the Mount Kenya people. What Moses Wetangula has said, to me, it sounds so biased, and he's the same man who, you remember, had a meeting with Western Kenya MCAs to plan on how they're going to, you know, present or fight for the Luhya interest. It was not about the Kikuyus or the Kalenjins or the Luos. So it shows you how they're acting like demons accusing the devil of being evil. You know. So when these demons, and I'm using this as a figurative of speech, and I'm likening the behavior of the devil and the demons, that it is wrong to do this. Now the devil says it's wrong to do this, and the demons are saying it's wrong for you to accuse us. What I'm trying to say here is that these are people who speak one language. So when the speaker comes out as a big kahuna and says what he says, what is expected of the members of parliament, and especially from the UDA party? What they have not considered is the ramifications after ousting this gentleman, the deputy president. One, they will have created a mistrust between William Ruto and any other person he will choose to relate with as a deputy president or a co-partner in establishment of any government. There will be no trust, because William Ruto, the president, came out so strongly declaring that none of the deputies, his deputies, if he was to have one Rigathi Gachagua now, maybe another term have somebody else, would be subjected to the kind of mistreatment that he experienced with the former regime. And on that basis, Mount Kenya people were very hopeful that they can be able to groom a president whom they groomed and they voted for and put him on that seat. What has he done after he got the power? He's now fighting their very own. Mount Kenya people have taken account of what Rigathi Gachagua has been able to fight for, as assigned by the president, because the president assigned him duties in office and also in public, that this is what I expect my deputy president to do. And what they have done is put these things to retrospect. If the president is angry with the deputy president, then he should consider what the Mount Kenya people are actually have actually received from this government, from his government, starting from the dairy farming, coffee farming, tea farmers' plight. And once he has been able to see whether there were progress as a result of the clamor by the deputy president for the rights of the people of Mount Kenya and other farmers, like farmers in other areas, to benefit, because if a tea farmer in Mount Kenya benefits from maybe higher tea bonuses, it's the same thing that will happen to others. So what I'm trying to say is that there is that account. Dairy farmers can boast that now they're receiving 50 shillings if they sell their milk to KCC, and 50 shillings from 27 shillings is quite a boost, you know. Coffee farmers, tea farmers today are receiving more than they had ever expected. They actually received from 50 to around 60 shillings, various tea factories. So what I'm trying to say is that these are people who are receiving 30 shillings, 34 shillings, 26 shillings, 28 shillings. Now they've been taken up to 50 shillings. These are people who have something they can brag about, and they have hope that if much is done with a government that is sober and united and cohesive, then that government can deliver their interest.
Right.
You know? So this is why I'm saying that the deputy president has a life still in that office, because the consideration that comes.
Where's the life?
That's what I'm saying. The life is in this. Is in the. It actually lies. His survival lies in the people. If you do not consider that there could be a massive exodus from the UDA party to another party, it might remain a shell party, a shell political ruling party, you know, a ruling political party, which will be like a shell. If Mount Kenya decides that we are now following this path and maybe join a certain political party, which they have options, if they do that, then that will mean that 2027 will be tricky. That is one.
You mean to have the deputy president leave and form his own party?
No. It's not about the deputy president leaving and forming. No. It's about Mount Kenya people moving. Mount Kenya people are not fruits in a basket. Mount Kenya people are not fruits in a basket, for your information. You see how independently they behave. When it comes to making their own decisions, they come on TV and they tell you that if you do this, do that, do this, do that for us, then
but
we
will need to have
what I'm trying to say is, it's not a leader who speaks for them. I wish you understand Mount Kenya politics. Mount Kenya people make decisions by themselves. As a matter of fact, Mount Kenya people drive their politicians. Let me tell you, in 2017, while Mount Kenya members of parliament failed to deliver in their own constituencies and went to the village to claim that all this time we have been supporting our very own President Uhuru Kenyatta to be able to lead on national issues. Mount Kenya people were asking them, so what about this that we asked you to do for us? You know? Come the nominations for Jubilee, they were all kicked out, save from Kanini Kega, whose challenger withdrew and went for the gubernatorial race. Now, what I'm trying to say is that that's how Mount Kenya views politics. If you don't consider even the decision to support Ruto, while Uhuru Kenyatta, their very own, they claimed tormented him, they still stood with William Ruto. Okay? And gave him a ground to politic.
Let me continue from there.
And from there on, you get a chance. And from there on, they actually went ahead and voted for him. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not because they were whipped by DP Rigathi Gachagua. No, they are the ones who empowered those MPs to continue supporting the then embattled Deputy President William Ruto.
All right. Moses, I'll come to you. What the Deputy President, in his defense, what he has been saying is that he's doing nothing wrong, because if Wamalwa or Musalia Mudavadi was to go to his region, he would call or push for the interest of the Mulembe people, subsequently for other leaders in various regions, and he says that is exactly what he's doing. So where's the line drawn between pushing for a region's interest and pushing for tribalism or negative ethnicity?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, I would like to agree with Muito on something that's about Mount Kenya politics. It is the people who drive their political leaders, as opposed to other regions where
the leaders drive the people.
Ukambani and the Luo Nyanza regions where the leaders drive the people. Mount Kenya people are very independent minded, and a case in point is what he's just allured to, 2017. the former president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the then deputy president, who is now the president, William Ruto, had a successful first term.
Yeah.
And the second term, when it started, then there arose some squabbles and battles, and the Mount Kenya people were not happy. So they asked him 2 questions. They said, you brought this man to us. This man, you said, was a Mugoroki, a Mwendawazimu kind of thing. And then you told us that you give me mine 10, and this guy is 10. So you've done your 5, you are into your 10, and now you are telling us you don't want this guy anymore. Explain to us what he has done. And if you follow keenly the meetings, the Naivasha, the Nyeri meetings and all that, you understand that the Mount Kenya people were just interested in knowing what the then deputy president had done to the president to warrant the kind of treatment that he was getting. And when the president failed to answer their questions, they answered him during the elections.
Yeah.
The result was very clear. So even now, everybody is wondering, what has our kingpin, who is now the senior most leader of the Mount Kenya region, and let's not forget this, that the Mount Kenya people are watching. And it's not easy to hoodwink them. So what will happen is that, as he has said, the people, the members of parliament, who are supposed to be the arbiters, have already shown a sign of bias. So what that means is they'll be watching them closely. They'll be watching them closely to see what they will do. As opposed to now the deputy president, goose being cooked, I think the people who should worry more are the members of parliament, the senators, and the president himself. Because the decisions that they take or they fail to take will have a turnaround politically that they might not have a chance to have a comeback. So it's in their interest to really think, because when it comes to Mount Kenya, and truth be told, you cannot wish these guys away if you really want to be president. So you have to really understand their interests, and even if you won't fully satisfy their interests, then don't go errantly against them.
Does that explain why President William Ruto is undecided on what to do?
I think President Ruto is undecided, and I also think the deputy president doesn't have a said mistake that they can point to.
Yeah.
All right? What I would say is that the deputy president has had an attitude and a demeanor that does not really portray him as deputy president. But what that can be termed as is just political bad manners. You see, just like any other marriage, in a political marriage, there is the head and there is the neck. So if you understand politics, then the neck doesn't go above the head. So one of the things that people should understand is that it's not that easy to impeach a sitting president or deputy president. If it were that easy, with the tension that existed between the then president and the then deputy president, and after the handshake with the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, he had the numbers to impeach the then deputy president if he wanted.
Right.
But did he attempt? No, because he knew it was going to be politically suicidal for him. Right now, if I was to advise the president, that is a political suicide.
Right.
He's trying to commit. Because whether it goes through or it doesn't go through, the ramifications, the consequences will be very dire. And you see, sometimes politically there are mistakes that are not forgivable. Just like in a marriage, if you try to cheat on your spouse, the probability of you getting forgiven is very slim. So in politics, there are some decisions you don't just take. If you take them, they work against you.
Right.
So I think I've answered your question. On the region's interests, of course, the politics of Kenya are highly ethnicized, all right? Save for now the entry of Gen Zs, who could now introduce a new way of viewing politics.
Right.
But since independence to the last elections, the elections agenda has clearly been a tribal. And politics is a game of numbers. So you cannot wish that away. And Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley have got the highest numbers. So how these regions view themselves, they view themselves as superior. And therefore, pointing at them would be if you really know what you want to do.
Right.
So how do I view this impeachment? I view it in 3 ways. One, it could be a bluff. All right? And by that I mean, the president could just be looking for a way to tame his deputy. That is by intimidating him a little and silencing him a little, because we can all see that the deputy president has been talking a lot.
Is he a man to be silenced, though?
Well, it will depend. He's frightened where he is right now. So, if it was a bluff, he will have been contained. All right?
Right.
2, it could be a diversionary tactic to keep the public busy so that we forget about the Adani deal, we forget about all these other bad things happening around. We've just read in the newspaper this morning about the stolen title deeds, the over 300 million expenditure on National Swahili Day. I mean, there are very many bad things happening, and politically, in order to silence something, you introduce something else.
People to talk about.
Yes. So it could be that actually the president and the deputy president are in very good terms, and they're just creating a diversionary tactic. And the third one, the third angle, it could be real. And if it is real, then it is politically instigated and motivated. And this is now where we are saying, if this is the case, then the MPs are in trouble. The senators are in trouble. And so is the president.
All right.
Because starting tomorrow, the way the Mount Kenya people view the president and his administration will change.
Right.
Yes.
Mwito, the president has called for a Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting. And we all know anytime the head of state calls for a meeting just before something important, a decision is made, whether at the National Assembly, it's always one, to whip them to vote a certain way or to go a certain direction. But for this time, the MPs, particularly those from UDA party, have said the president should not intervene. So what is the timing of this parliamentary group meeting, if at all the head of state is not supposed to intervene and, for lack of a better word, save his deputy?
Holding a parliamentary group meeting today is tactical. Tactical in the sense that the president would like the Mount Kenya people to feel that, hey, I had tried to save him, but it didn't work. Your leaders decided. You understand? So he thinks it's a way that would earn him some, a little favor with the members of the Mount Kenya community. And Mount Kenya community knows that if you were to speak, you'd have spoken long time ago. Because when you see, if it's like what example of a feud in a marriage, and you see one of them go to the rooftop to scream from there, it means either beneath there's fire burning. It's too hot to handle. And when you see the deputy president running public and making, I'm pleading with the people, so that the president at least can hear and make a move. That started way early this year. So it means if the president was to do something, he would have done something then.
Well, he was out of the country.
No. I'm saying if he was to do way early this year when the deputy president began to, complain that things are not right. That's around May, April. Now, we saw that during the Gen Z meetings, there were accusations, they went parliamentary group meeting, they received money, blah, blah, blah. Today, maybe it could be topped up to 500,000. If 100,000 is making them go gaga, then I think 500,000 would do them.
Well, those are just allegations.
No, it's allegations. No, it's allegations. It's allegations when you put one and one together because, right. If no one has taken any steps against the 100,000 claims by the opposition leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, then it means it could be true, because it could be real, because he also has members of parliament who would tell him what is going on in parliament. Yes. So the 100,000 shillings could be there. So I can multiply it to 500,000 and say how crazy these people might be, and without caring whether Kenyans know or understand or feel anything about what they are about to take to parliament and present as accusations or allegations against, accusations against the deputy president.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. When they had what they had and thought things were actually going to run their way, they didn't know that Kenyans were watching, even at the bringing down of the finance bill. It was shut down by the masses, because they thought masses don't understand. Masses won't take any steps, won't take any action. No, masses took action. Not that they have never been seeing, but they took action when this anger and rage had actually reached the brim. Now, when we are looking at what is happening today, the parliamentarians might go and meet, but they've been speaking in public, and the president has said nothing. There's nothing he's going to say different from what he ought to have said before. Secondly, if the motion is already planned for tomorrow, then it means it will be presented to Parliament. The President can save the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua.
If he wanted to.
If he wanted to, he would have saved him. And I don't know whether it will still go for the President's, assent once they make the decision, whether he agrees or not to it. I don't know whether it goes to that point.
No, it doesn't.
This doesn't. It's not
because
like
it's not a bill.
It's not a bill.
Yes.
Thank you.
What will happen once they pass it? It will go to the Senate.
It will go to the Senate.
Yes.
Senate will have to discuss it.
Yes.
And since the same article, which is for impeaching the deputy president, at clause 2, it tells you that they will have to borrow, or they have to refer to Article 144 and 145, which is on the impeachment of the president. They were not specific on which clause to look into, so that they could use to modify, which means it gives credibility to anyone who presents a case to court if they don't follow the two articles to the latter. The only modification they're supposed to do is to replace the name president with deputy president. That's all they're supposed to do to Article 144 and 146, which means the Chief Justice will also form a tribunal, should also form a tribunal to look into this matter. But again, Article 144 would be looking into incapacitation, while the impeachment bit will be looked at in the Article 145. Right. So again, don't forget that impeaching Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua means that the Mount Kenya people, power of their votes will now dwindle, and it will have less impact, because the next, if it succeeds, the next person to be appointed as deputy president will be a presidential appointee. While we were doing the constitution review, we had considered what especially President Moi had done with the various, with the several vice presidents he had. He was sacking them even at the roadside. And that's the kind of presidency I'm trying to see now. Once a presidential appointee comes, he becomes answerable and works to the whims of the president, not to the people. But the deputy president who is elected on a ballot during an electioneering moment, it means that person is answerable to the people. And that's why you see the current deputy president is not a pushover, because one, he came in with interests of masses. The masses that pushed him into that position is not the will or the wish of the president. So whoever would have been appointed or from Mount Kenya would have had this kind of support. So it's going to be a puppet deputy president if the voted in deputy president is going to be ousted via impeachment. The one who comes will just be a puppet. And if it's going to come from Mount Kenya, rest assured, Mount Kenya will actually reject that and they will move their way. They will still be in government, but they'll move their way. Meaning, come 2027, right now, after tomorrow, Tuesday, Mount Kenya people are beginning to plan their ways because the trust for William Ruto is now dead. Don't forget that 2012, the scars of post-election violence were still fresh with the Mount Kenya people who actually suffered a great deal that time of the massacres. And the accusations that were leveled against Rift Valley and their kingpins and their leaders, including William Ruto himself, was still fresh in 2012. But the fact that Uhuru Kenyatta appointed William Ruto to become his running mate, having tried Musalia Mudavadi, when William Ruto accepted, they had to forgive. They had to decide to forgive. Now, when you take somebody's kindness for foolishness, and that person realizes that this is what you're taking me for, then it may not be business as usual. And I'm telling you, come 2027, starting from tomorrow, whether Rigathi is taken out of the office of deputy presidency or is retained, that mistrust begins to germinate. And which means that the relationship between William Ruto and Mount Kenya voters is definitely going to change. Because I'm supporting this with what some of the members of parliament have said. Nyinyi wa Kikuyu nyinyi. And you know, they had this kind of tones, you know, voiced during the post-election, you know. And they had these kind of things, the drums being beaten that time. So I'm saying that the message and the signals they're sending as a community is unfortunate. Secondly, Kenya is a community that is formed with tribes. USA is formed with race and origins. Hispanics from wherever, Black Americans from wherever. So they do it with race.
Right.
If you go to England, it's class. The lords, the whoever, there is that clique that says, and there are these common people who just say their bit and that's it. Now, come to Somalia, it's about families and clans. So we should stop likening ourselves to anybody else. We are for a formation of tribes, and we should respect ourselves as so, and cohabit one with another, and purpose and decide to love one another, not demonize what is being demonized by people who don't even are not even able to handle their matters, whether it's the Americans or the British. It's up to us now to know that yes, we are made up of tribes, and we should love and respect one another. So fairness is what we expect in this whole thing. All right.
Moses, what would be the role of Azimio members of parliament in this kind of motion if it gets to parliament? Because what I heard the deputy president speak about yesterday is that he hopes members of parliament from Azimio coalition will not be able to participate in this because he says, yes, he supports Raila Odinga, but he does not understand, you know, why they would want to impeach me. So what would be the role of Azimio members of parliament in this kind of proceedings?
Now, let's say this. If the motion gets to parliament, it will pass.
This
the numbers
with signatures from Azimio?
Yes. With or without the involvement of Azimio. The reason is, right now, as at Friday, the signatures were at 280. Now we reliably understand from certain quarters that they've reached 300.
Yes.
So that would simply tell you that if those guys appended their signatures, then they were going to actually vote if that motion indeed came to parliament. So it's a matter of whether the motion gets to Parliament or not. And that's why the move that now the president makes will define him now and in 2027. When we look at Articles 147, 149 and 150, Article 147 talks about the functions of the deputy president, which are not exactly defined. It's just defined as the principal assistant to the president, and he can stand in for the president when the president is not in. And also, he can perform any other duties that the president may assign him. Up to now, there is nothing the president can say he has assigned to his deputy that he has not done. When you look at Article 149, talks about the vacancy of the office of the DP.
Yeah.
As opposed to vacancy in the office of the president, which is discussed in the articles earlier, incapacitation is one of the grounds for vacancy of the office of the president. But Article 149 clearly gives 3 grounds for vacancy in that office.
Yeah.
1 is death, 2 is resignation, and 3 is impeachment. It does not talk about incapacitation. So that should tell you that the framers of the Constitution were trying to shield a possible mismanagement of how to get a sitting deputy president out of office.
Yeah.
And Muito has clearly talked about why we changed that pattern. It's because of the way the former President Moi used to do. At some point, we stayed for, I think, 13 months without a deputy president because he had made a roadside declaration that the then Vice President, George Saitoti, Professor, the late, ceased to be a deputy president. And when people really clamored, he, in his usual tone and voice, one day he stood in front of masses and he said, "Huyo ndio mnataka, basi mchukueni." And that was it. He was restored back to the position. Yeah. And then now you wonder, why would a deputy president or a vice president who is given so much power such that in the event of death, resignation, incapacitation, impeachment or any other reason for the president to cease holding office, then the deputy president takes over. So that is not a seat befitting a flower girl position. So when we look at Article 150, again it talks about the process of removal of a sitting deputy president. Yeah. And that's why I said, legally, from where I sit, there are no grounds to impeach the deputy president. What he's been doing is just a little lack of submission in the marital kind of organization and some political bad manners, which can be solved otherwise. It doesn't have to escalate to the process of impeachment. And that's why I'm saying that because impeachment is partly a legal process and partly a political process, this has taken a political tone. Now, if the senators, because once the once the impeachment motion reaches the Senate, they will have to first form a committee to discuss its merits. If they choose to ignore what they will be seeing and they pass it anyway, the courts will save him. I can guarantee you from here. Because when the Constitution talks of gross misconduct, it talks of everything gross. It is not just misconduct. It has to be gross. Gross violation. Gross violation of, of the Constitution. Then it also talks about breaking the law, one of the national laws or an international law. But then, when you put it into perspective, there is no merit to take up such a case. So this is a political process. And that's why the political players should be very careful how they take it. Now, I will bring some background so that we also understand why UDA and why the Mount Kenya leaders are behaving the way they are behaving. So I'll take you back to slightly before 2022. So when the president announced his candidature, he was first hit with the first reality of appointing a deputy. And now, I would say that the imminent impeachment of the DP at this point takes different dimensions. Let's look at it this way. When the deputy president was nominated, it was against the wishes of very many Mount Kenya leaders who are now currently elected. If you can run your memory a little, you would see that any average supporter of the president then, including either me and you or Muito, if either of us supported him, would have rightly chosen Professor Kindiki Kithure as the running mate. All right? So, we start from there. He was not the most preferable candidate. And therefore, most of these Mount Kenya leaders have lived with the fear that he would use his position now as the deputy president to unseat them in 2027. The same case goes to UDA, because again, most UDA delegates would have preferred Professor Kindiki Kithure to DP Gachagua. So the fight has not started now.
Started before.
It started before they were elected into office. And therefore, what they are doing now is that they are looking at the slightest available opportunity to make good their initial wish, which was to get another candidate to deputize the president. Now, the reason why it did not happen then is because it was going to be a costly mistake. All right? And sometimes in politics, one decision tells you you are done for. In 2013, when the former president Uhuru Kenyatta were coming into office with the then deputy, who is now the current president, one analysis was done by Professor Mutai Nguni, and he came up with the analogy of tyranny of numbers. When he looked at how Mount Kenya had registered as voters and Rift Valley, he said the two communities are enough to make a president a sitting president. All right? So that decision at that point was already clear. Now, when we come and look at the previous elections, when we even look at the other camp of the former prime minister, just by whoever he chose as the running mate, he had already poised himself to failure. That decision in itself started his journey of failing. And therefore, this other side had to be careful not to make the same mistake. So they made sure that they were going to follow the interests of the Mount Kenya region as much as they could. And that is why they settled for the current DP. Now, what the electorate felt then is still what he feels now. All right? So, removing him from office is also going to elicit some problems from Mount Kenya. That is given. And that is why they should be very careful not to do that. All right? Now, if I was to advise these Mount Kenya leaders, because again, you look at the regional politics, I've told you that, and so is my fellow panelists, we've told you that Mount Kenya people show their leaders how they want to go. And so, right now, they have the relationship between the president and the Mount Kenya people is hanging by the thread. One, this was a very popular government when it came in.
Darling of the
nationally, it was a darling of the people. That narrative has changed. It is not as popular as it was then. So, another mistake that could cut the remaining piece of the string would be a political miscalculation. Because what will happen is that these Mount Kenya leaders think that by getting the DP out, their interests are served for 2027. But the people are the ones to decide. And as it is now, the current government and regime is not that popular.
Yeah.
So if it goes to 2027 like that, even without the interference thereof of the deputy president, they will all go home. Because they will be identified with a government that did not perform and a government that did not serve their interests. So, from where I speak, the Mount Kenya leaders should be very careful. The UDA leaders should be very careful because Kenyans are watching. This time that they are wasting, there are very many bills that should be brought to Parliament. I don't think this impeachment is something that should be treated with that urgency. That all those guys, I mean, do you ever see MPs coming in 300s to vote for a bill? When certain things, and when Kenyans, because Kenyans were not politically elite a while ago, but right now, Kenyans are not for lack of a better word, the political fools that we once were. Kenyans are now wiser. Kenyans can now see, they can now read between the lines. And therefore, any decision you make, thinking that you will go to confuse the Kenyans and convince them, it will work against you.
Right, Muito, you'll add on to that, but this is such a defining week, not just for whether or not the deputy president will survive, but also on his relationship with the president, William Ruto. Now, if at all the members of parliament push through with this impeachment motion tomorrow, which will be at the floor of the National Assembly, what options does the deputy president at this point now have, this morning as we speak? What is running through his mind on what options he has on the table to either survive this impeachment or, to improve his relationship with the head of state, or to at least to maintain touch with the ground, as he always says?
Well, the future after tomorrow is hypothetical. So the deputy president is seeing it from a point where, is there any possibility for me to survive? And it's like what we were trying to, put on the table. What would be running through the mind of the president? And what would be running, what would be actually spinning within the conscience of the president, seeing what had happened to him with the Mount Kenya people since 2018. So certain convictions might cause these things to change.
Right.
And having the motion set off is one thing. We can all sign to, if there's any rewards to get, I would sign to get it. But come the day of voting, what options do they have? One is absentia. Absenteeism might come into play. I was not in parliament, and I've been in parliament and I've voted. Secondly, if they go for a secret ballot, definitely the deputy president will survive. They might make this big talk on TV that the president has nothing to tell them, but they know too well we shall drop this thing at the secret ballot. Or they take it to the next level. The tussle and competition between the Senate and the and the National Assembly is not something that has we can claim that it's died down. It's still on.
Yeah.
So they might push it in National Assembly and be rejected at the Senate. And also when you go to the tribunal, you know, there's been this feud of funding of the, you know, the judiciary and other things, and cases also that have been brought forth before, and the claims that the attacks, scathing attacks that have been leveled against the judiciary due to certain cases that have been presented before them. Without dwelling too much on that, there is a chance for him to survive. And the president does not have to say anything at the moment. He ought to have said it long time ago. What I'm trying to say is that his relationship with Mount Kenya is already dented. And even after the survival of the deputy president, the relationship between the deputy president, William Ruto, the trust that he had been bestowed by the people of Mount Kenya will actually be taken away. And Mount Kenya people will begin to see him as somebody who is not trustworthy. Now, coming to the other repercussions, besides the exodus, the mass exodus from the UDA party and the mistrust, we will also have people have already started in Mount Kenya. If you are a keen person, as Rigathi Gachagua says, be a keen listener to the ground, they are actually warming up to registration for voting come 2027. And they're going to do that in masses. Now, the appointment of the DP, who is not elected by the people, Mount Kenya will not have trust. And whatever carrots are dangled at the moment, that if you do this, you're going to have your roads, the road this, road A, road B, project A, project B revived, which you heard Kimani Ichung'wah say that in 3 weeks we'll have this thing done for you, you know. These are things that might happen well for the next few months if they succeed with their ploy against Rigathi Gachagua. But whether they succeed or not, they must consider what the people of Mount Kenya think. Now, if President William Ruto was granted 47% of votes supporting him, and Raila Odinga was granted close to 10% of the total votes that he garnered, and they already united Mount Kenya people. In agreement with Uhuru Kenyatta, you saw a certain group of majority youth who were actually on the other side agreeing at Limuru that they will support Rigathi Gachagua. That tells you is no longer 47%. It's going to be more than that. And that's what I'm saying. He should be worried by the mass exodus from the UDA party. And I'm saying if UDA party is left a shell, he has no power, on ground. And come 2027 is going to be very tricky. And that's why you're seeing the likes of Kalonzo Musyoka and the DAP party, they are aligning themselves with, if Mount Kenya would come out, then we'd form an alliance, just the same way it happened with the formation of the NK for Wamalwa, Charity Ngilu, and Mwai Kibaki. So what I'm saying is not going to be a walk in the park for the president after this. So he has to make it very quick, and he has to come out so strongly in support of the deputy president. And what we're seeing is that the divide and rule tactic is also into play, where we're seeing people like, from Kiambu, you have Kimani Ichung'wah, they used to have Kuria Kanyinge. You go to Murang'a, they wanted to pick Ndindi Nyoro for Joseph Kamotho, or Ndindi Nyoro was to come in as Kenneth Matiba, but that was to create a narrative that would split the larger Mount Kenya electorate, because they know that Mount Kenya vote lies in Kiambu, Murang'a, and Nyeri. Then Meru. Okay? So they had to make sure that they play these politics. Now, just touching on some of the reasons that have been brought forth as accusations that the president has been behaving inconsistent with the constitution, are things like, he was outspoken, he attacked or mentioned in public or fought in public certain state officials, public officials like maybe Judge Esther, who had taken part in freezing his assets and also accounts. Now, if you saw that the deputy president deserved to have his wealth frozen before elections, and justice was applied then, how come after he was sworn in as deputy president, there was an acquittal and the DPP did not push for, maybe an appeal or something like that, because he being the one, the then DPP, who is now the current NIS boss, did not push for this, an appeal, that the judgment was unfair based on the facts that he had presented, because it was a political machination, and that's why it didn't go far. Secondly, the deputy president was vetted and declared his wealth and explained the whereabouts of his wealth, both even in interviews, and it has never been questionable that he had not less than 10 billion or 12 billion shillings worth of an estate. Now, if such a person invests 5 billion, I have no interest in it, but if he invests 5 billion out of the 12 billion, which you have already ratified that this guy is clean and clear, then I think there should be no case against the deputy president, because how would you claim again that he is not capable of investing 5 billion if before now, 2 years ago, you had already cleared him of being worth more than that? So
the allegations against him by members of Parliament?
They're flimsy.
They're flimsy.
They will not. They're actually not going to carry the day. But there's one thing that's so sure going to happen: the dented relationship between the president, William Ruto, and the Mount Kenya electorate. Right. That's going to change, whether DP survives or DP goes. Gachagua.
Right. Moses, at this point in time, is resignation an option for the deputy president?
Yes, it is, but it is the easier option, but again, it is the most expensive for him, politically. Power is not something that is small. If you see the motorcade of the deputy president now, if you see the kind of office he has, his current residence, the access he has, if that is taken away from him, he would not survive politically. Okay, it would not render him useless in politics, but he would not survive. But why would he resign? He would only resign if he sees that there is a very clear, watertight case against him, because here there is a balance of interests. What will happen is he's waiting to see whether the motion will be tabled in Parliament. Now, if it is tabled and they vote, of course they'll give him a chance to come and explain himself. From the way he will look at things, his advisors will tell him at this point, just resign instead of waiting to be impeached. Again, if he has some smart legal advisors, they will also tell him whether, based on those grounds, he has survival chances at the courts. All right? So, for me, if I was to advise him, I would tell him to fight on and soldier on, because this will give him a political lifeline. I'll give you a scenario. If the motion passes in Parliament and it goes to the Senate, there's a 40% chance that the Senate will save him.
A 40% chance.
A 40% chance. Again, if they don't, there is a 50% chance that the case will go to court. And another 50% chance that the courts will save him. Now, how does this help him politically? Such a case will not be concluded within less than 2 years. We are in 2024.
Yeah.
If we were just to follow that path alone, that case will be cleared towards the end of 2026, and he will have survived. That's a chance he could take, unless there is something that he knows that we don't know that could dent his image.
Right.
Because again, you see, if he gets impeached, that means the end of a political career, the end of a public service career. It will carry some shame and embarrassment politically, and it will definitely drive him into political oblivion. All right? And he will not wait for it to get to that point. So he's a smart guy. He will weigh the options. He will look at the chances of him surviving, and that's what even Muito was trying to tell you, that he's trying to see the easiest way for him to survive.
Yeah.
And of course, resigning is not one of the options at this point. I would tell him to resign when he's very much cornered, just before he's impeached, if that will happen.
Right.
And if it arises that there are very serious issues against him,
Yes.
that would warrant his impeachment. And already, because as it is now, the numbers are not in his favor, he needs a strategy, and a good strategy. If I was to advise him, I would tell him to hold on. Let him wait for the motion.
Yeah.
Let him fight the motion.
Right.
And let him consider the option of going to court if it will have worked against him.
Right.
But again, the Mount Kenya leaders and the president should be wary that it doesn't get to this. Because if the deputy president comes out victorious, it will work against the Mount Kenya leaders and against the president.
All right.
Why am I saying this?
Yeah.
And you see, as he's saying, you can, even the leaders will have been told, you see, if you vote, we will do this, we will do that. That is how they passed the finance bill. What happened after that? I mean, if they didn't learn then, I would say they have a short memory. And you see, people are watching. And people won't be forgiving. You saw how they were, in quotes, salimiwad. It was instant justice. Like, people reacted there and then. A few of their leaders, the properties were touched here and there. One of the Kiambu leaders even used to walk in a pro box for fear of people will identify him using the car that they know, and they would attack him.
Yeah.
So this is not something they should take lightly. Again, the interest of the president right now should be one, to complete his first term successfully. And if he allows these distractions to go on, that will not be achieved.
Right.
And you see, the re-election of this government is very far from assured. So it is in the interest of the president right now to save his deputy. And why would he do that? Because if the deputy president goes, his relationship with the Mount Kenya electorate will have been buried, and it will have sealed his fate as well as the fate of the existing Mount Kenya leaders come 2027. Now, like they say, the way we have said, you see, on the grounds, they are not very strong. But the options that the DP has, even though they are limited, he still has a life. He still has a surviving chance. So as I said, the numbers are against him. So he will have to either fight the motion in Parliament and in courts, or if push comes to shove, resign at some point during the process. And you see, both options are very risky, but they also carry potential rewards. And what I would say is that the stakes are quite high. He should not allow himself to be impeached. Let him advise that.
All right, gentlemen,
because right now he has unseen enemies. And what those enemies will do is that they will push and press all the buttons to finish him politically and financially. And you see, in politics, if you are financially incapacitated and your power is withdrawn, you are as good as the common man.
Right. We have to wrap this conversation, gentlemen. So, Muto, I'll give you just a minute to wrap it up in a minute. We're way out of time.
I wish it's a minute and a half, but I think much of what we were to say has been spoken, and the Deputy President, being a stoical leader and a principled leader, will choose to keep his integrity up there, will choose to have his identity respected as presented ever since, that he's not a man who is a pushover and he will not go out of fear. And of course, this is what he says in public, but definitely I know that deep down within him, he could be feeling that yes, there's some heat, but it may not necessarily work against him even if the impeachment takes place, because his endorsement, if he comes out as a very strong, principled person who has been unfairly treated, his endorsement of any political leader might make some sense even thereafter, although that is 50-50. But if he survives this time, it makes him a potential leader of the region and of the country, because there are so many people, not for 2027, but even thereafter. But because even people from other communities have actually been following this whole movie about Rigathi Gachagua. But leaving that aside for now, because I know there is no time, let's say, let this whole story not really hoodwink Kenyans, that their Adani deal is about to be signed or is already signed for the airport. We also have the other interest that is expressed on the Ketraco, which actually manages all sources of all energy from all sources, that is geothermal and whatever, and hydro, solar, and wind power. It manages all this. So if it's given out to strangers, then that means Kenya has nothing for itself. Thirdly, I would also say the Chief deal has already pulled the Adani guys into it. And also this small thing that had come up, the president's son is in a company, legal firm, that is granted, the legal rights for, representing this whole transaction, the Hamiltons. This is in public. So I think maybe there are personal interests that are running through it. And Kenyans really are so keen on getting to know where really is their NHIF contributions going to go, because the NHIF will be closing, wrapping up tomorrow. And entry of Chief now means it takes over the health, whatever. So
we're out of time.
With that one, I think Kenyans are awake, and let's not be hoodwinked that it's about Rigiji. It could be about the Adani.
It could be a diversionary tactic.
Yes, diversionary tactic, because there must be an inclusion of a local investor in any foreign investment that is done. Who is this local investor?
All right, Moses, earlier on when we began the show, you said the DP at this point has no friends. So in a minute, as we wrap it up.
My wrapping up statement would now divert from politics a little, and I will address what this impeachment will do to this country. But as you can see, it has already raised political temperatures, and this is not good for our country, especially with our ailing economy.
Yeah.
So if I was to reach out to the political class, starting with the president and his team,
yeah,
the UDA members, the members of parliament, the senators, I would ask them to ponder carefully the predicament that they would put this country in if this thing is to continue.
Yes.
Again, for the president, his interest should be to finish this term and probably get a re-election. A divorce with Mount Kenya would be very costly. The wise man said a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. The Luo Nyanza voting bloc is not yet guaranteed for him. The Western bloc is not guaranteed for him. He already has the Mount Kenya bloc with him. If I were him, I would fight to the last drop of my blood to keep those guys. Because if the political cards change, he will be at a very bad place. It will mean that he will not be able to win on the first round in 2027. And you see the disadvantage as opposed to the general election where it is 50% plus one. When you go to a runoff, it is simply the majority. So with one voting bloc not in your favor, you are not in a very good position. So if I were him, I would advise him to save his president. And off the books,
his deputy.
Yes, he would save his deputy, sorry. And off the books, to our deputy president, your wife, the second lady, and the first lady share a very cordial relationship. If you are not able to reach the president, please talk to your spouse, to talk to the president's spouse to save this scenario. The spouses know where the husbands, where they are touched, the soft spots, to listen to them. By hook or crook, he should be saved. For the interest of the country, as I've said, because of the political temperatures, it will not be good for the country. And it is not also good for the ruling coalition and the ruling party and the ruling regime. It will work against them badly.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I wish we could have some more time so that we keep on talking about this, but we're out of time. Thank you very much. Muito Mureithi, who's a political commentator on my immediate right, and Moses Kimanzi, who's a lawyer and a political analyst as well. Asanteni sana. Thank you for coming in. We'll be keeping tabs with what happens today first at the parliamentary group meeting. That is the Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group meeting. What will be the conclusion after the meeting, as well as, you know, what happens tomorrow could be a defining moment, but it all basically relies on what happens today, because there is a chance perhaps the president might want to intervene and save the deputy president. So we'll be keeping tabs with that and much more, making headlines across the country. Thank you very much for watching. This is Morning Live. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Have yourself a wonderful morning ahead.